the gamut in expertise and preparedness on the standardization side ranges a little bit, but in all cases, when we come to the table to talk about climate risk mitigation, they're very interested in making sure the property, the portfolio, the asset is prepared to moderate some level of climate risk exposure.
Joining me today is Anica Landreneau, Global Director of Sustainability at HOK. Anica, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So you're on a panel here at REITworks looking at climate scenario analysis. To what extent are you seeing building owners adapt for increasing natural disasters in the future, and why is it important?
Well, it's a great question. We see some building owners have already been thoughtful about setting a particular climate scenario that they want to design or update their facilities to be prepared to meet. Others haven't yet established that as a standard, so we are working with them to explore the range of climate risks, and then the different risk mitigation strategies that might be appropriate, and then selecting right-sizing the approach for that property and for the investment level that they're capable of making for that project. So I'd say the gamut in expertise and preparedness on the standardization side ranges a little bit, but in all cases, when we come to the table to talk about climate risk mitigation, they're very interested in making sure the property, the portfolio, the asset is prepared to moderate some level of climate risk exposure.
And as a leader in climate action among design firms, what are some ways that HOK is working to address climate change within the commercial real estate sector?
So on the adaptation and resilience side, we have a risk assessment checklist we use on every project, and that really identifies the range of risk exposure and then walks clients and design team partners through decision making and helps to document what decisions we made in the design process and what fed into that. So we can go back and revisit that anytime. On the decarbonization or the mitigation side, we have several longstanding and some newer decarbonization commitments. We have an AIA 2030 that looks at all of the design in our portfolio hitting zero carbon operations by 2030. Then we have two 2040 milestones for MEP systems, and that's looking at refrigerants, it's looking at embodied carbon in our mechanical systems. We have an ASLA, that's a landscape-focused 2040 commitment. That's looking at embodied carbon in hardscape and carbon sequestration in greenscape, which I think is also really important, and we don't necessarily give enough credence to. And then finally, we have an SE 2050, which looks at eliminating embodied carbon emissions from our structures and ultimately our enclosures and interior finishes by 2050.
And what are the biggest challenges facing the built environment, whole building life cycle emissions?
I think we have a range of grid carbonization. There are some decarbonization commitments and policies out there at the jurisdictional level, but how those grids are going to actually meet their targets for getting to 100% renewable portfolio standard, will they do it on time? It's hard to say, and it's clear that the grid has to meet the buildings at some point. The buildings can't do all the lifting. The grid is going to have to play a role in that. And as we're looking at electrification and moving to non-fossil fuel sources of energy for our buildings, as the vehicle sector is transitioning to electric vehicles, and then how some other outside influences like data centers and on the panel we just discussed Bitcoin mining and other things are really driving demand on that grid. We really have to understand what new loads are coming onto the grid and when, and how those are modulated so that our buildings continue to be resilient.